In this lesson, let's focus on creating the thumb depression in our hand grip steering wheel area. As you can see in the image, there's a section where it's depressed for the thumb of the driver. Now this is going to be very difficult for us to create, especially not knowing the exact geometry for this. So we're going to take a very general look at the approach that we would take to create this type of geometry. I'm going to start a new sketch on the front plane, and I'm going to draw two lines. I'm going to draw a line roughly in line with the steering wheel, and I'm going to draw another line out here in space. I want to right click on the second line, select the midpoint, and Control select the first line, and give them a make midpoint relation. I'm going to select both lines, make them both equal, also want to make them perpendicular, then I can drag them around, change the size and scale. I want to move these into place and use these to create some planes. For instance, if I want to drag this around, get back to roughly my original location, fix an endpoint, I can fix everything in place, hit OK. I can use these to create some plane references. Under the reference geometry dropdown, we're going to use plane. Our first reference is going to be the front plane. And our second reference is going to be one of these lines. What's happening here is we're using the front plane as our first reference. We're creating a plane 90 degrees rotated about this line. We're going to do the same thing again. We're going to use reference geometry, create a plane. Our first reference is going to be our front plane. Our second reference is a second line we drew. Now we have two planes we can use to create some geometry. On the first plane we created, I'm going to start a new sketch. I'm going to rotate this around and use our Convert Entities dropdown and Intersection curve. I want to select the area of concern, the surface. So once we do that, we have two lines that are created in our sketch. We don't need the back line. We can also hide our plane that we're sketching on. This front line, I'm going to go ahead and turn into construction geometry. And now I want to create some geometry for our thumb section that's going to intersect with that. So if this is our surface, I'm going to create a 3-point arc. I'm going to use a start point, an end point, and just simply give it some curvature and make sure that we're intersecting the surface. So if we rotate this around, you can drag it around a little bit and keep in mind that we don't have any defining geometry for this. So everything is going to be based on look and feel for these surfaces. So let's hit OK. Let's start a sketch on our second plane. We're going to follow the same procedure. I'm going to rotate this around. Let's use Convert Entities, Intersection Curve, and select that same surface again. You can see this time, because the plane is bisecting almost the entire steering wheel, we're getting a circular reference. This is something we can still use. We're going to again turn it into construction geometry, and again draw a 3-point arc. This time it's going to be a little bit different, because we want to right-click this arc, select its midpoint, and then select the arc we drew in our last sketch, holding down the Control key. We want to make sure that these pierce. So what we've done is we've taken that second arc and we've pierced the first arc. This is going to be important. Exit the sketch, hide our plane, and hide our reference sketch used for those planes. Now we're going to create a boundary surface using one of these arcs as direction 1 and the other arc as direction 2. This is creating a surface that we're going to use to trim and create the section for our thumb depression. So let's hit OK and take a look at what we've created. Now you can see that we're actually cutting into the surface a little bit too much, and this is why we need to go back to that original sketch that we left undefined for our boundary surface. So sketch, in this case 89, that geometry looks like it'll be okay. Sketch 88, it looks like we need to adjust. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to drag the end of this handle and hit OK. You can see this produced an error. If we show both of our sketches, we can see why. Once I drag that arc, because it is undefined, it was able to actually flip-flop and produce an arc the other direction. So if we undo the modification and take a look at what we can do to help this, I'm going to take this one endpoint and fix it in place. That allows me to easily drag the other endpoint without having it flip. So now if we take a look at our geometry, that looks a little bit better. We're going to use the Extend Surface option and extend this lower edge, making sure we use same surface. So now you can see everything's cutting in nicely, but I still want to modify this arc just a little bit. So we're going to go back to our sketch and take a look at what we can do. So I'm going to fix this endpoint, and then I'm going to apply a dimension to this arc. So right now the radius is 83. If we want to make this a tighter arc, I'm going to give it a smaller value. So now we take a look at the surface. You can see we're no longer intersecting farther into our filled surface. Let's hide both of these sketches. Let's use the trim tool. Trim surface, and we're going to select the trim type as mutual. This allows us to make two surface selections. And then under the lower box, we're going to remove the external portion of our new boundary surface, and we're going to remove the external portion of our lofted steering wheel. Once we hit OK, our new thumb depression is in place and everything is knitted together. That concludes the video on making the thumb depression on our steering wheel.